Welcome to the Hycan 007, an SUV you've never heard about, but you should have done because you can control a freaking drone from its central touchscreen.
The Chinese EV market is currently in a state of explosion. New companies are being formed and countless EV car models are entering the market. The pace is kind of breathtaking, but if you take too long to catch your breath, you'll definitely have missed several new releases.
Hycan is one such company. It was formed as a partnership between Guangzhou Auto Company and a now famous NIO, with NIO Capital originally holding around 49% of the then called GAC NIO partnership. Founded in April 2019, they brought their first car to market a year later in April 2020, the 007 SUV.
So what do you get for a $40,000 EV SUV from an automaker barely 18 months old in the Chinese domestic market? Let's find out.
The Hycan brand is leveraging its partnership's expertise to produce and develop mainstream priced EV cars. Most of us are now familiar with NIO. After its rally on the New York Stock Exchange, it has had its fair share of media coverage. GAC, however, is not so well known outside of China, but it is China's 6th largest automaker, so no small fish. GAC brings its manufacturing expertise to the table, with the 007's chassis, battery packs and motors being shared as well as being built on the same production line as the GAC Ion LX. In fact, most of the underlying ADAS tech is based on GAC's own ADAS systems found in its Ion brand vehicles. The current EV jewel from the Chinese market, NIO, lent its own knowledge and, with GAC, cooperated in research and development of smart connected EVs. The AI assistant found in the Hycan is based on the same technology as the NIO Nomi from Mega Technology. Hycan themselves are responsible for packaging it all together in funky styling, appealing to first-time EV buyers. Hycan takes the expertise of its partners and uses it to develop its own path forwards, with a few neat tricks of its own.
This is the Hycan 007, the first product from this new brand. There are currently 3 trims and they all have a single synchronous permanent magnet motor on the front axle, making this front-wheel drive. Later, Hycan will be releasing a 4-wheel drive version with an additional motor on the rear.
Although there are 3 trim levels, base, plus and top, the performance is 2-tiered. Plus and top have the same level of performance with 205 horsepower on tap, while the base is a little less powerful with 184 horsepower. All models have 350 Nm of torque on hand though, and this allows them all to hit 31 miles an hour from a standstill in 3.28 seconds. The sprint from 0 to 62 miles an hour is dealt with by the base model in 8.2 seconds, while the other 2 trim levels will do the dash a little quicker at 7.9 seconds. All models of the 007 have a top speed of 105 miles per hour.
Now that's not blistering performance by any means. And when the dual motor version does land, I expect it to be around the mid 6 seconds to 62. But this is a sensible mainstream car that focuses more on tech and self-driving ability than outright performance. I mean, the top model is right on par with the Mercedes GLC 200 4MATIC to 62 miles an hour, and it will probably outsprint it to 30. Yes, the top speed is only 105 miles an hour, but most places in the world only legally let you go 70 to 80 miles an hour anyway. Sorry, my Deutschland friends, this isn't the car for you if you want to crush miles of open Autobahn, but for everybody else, it's probably okay. You might take a few hits against your mate in the pub top trumps though. So suspension in the Hycan 007 is straight up and simple. No air suspension, no adaptive suspension, just good old struts and springs. In the front is McPherson struts, and in the rear is a multi-link independent setup. A decent setup for ride comfort. No trailing arm, and God forbid, rear live axle. For this price point, a suspension that you'd expect to find.
Without adaptive suspension, it does mean that you won't get that variance between a sportier, stiffer feeling and a more relaxed, comfort-orientated dampening. We've become a bit spoilt in that department thanks to adaptive suspension, but the suspension in the Hycan 007 does a commendable job on rough road surfaces. Obviously, on very harsh road surfaces, bumps are going to penetrate the cabin. The tyres do help reduce the amount of harsh, sharp thuds that come through. With 245/50 tyres all the way round, you get a decent amount of sidewall rubber to help smooth out the ride. Don't expect miracles, but with the Chinese preference to comfort, Hycan has obviously focused on making the ride as smooth as possible.
Now, talking about wheels, the Hycan 007 comes with these 20-inch 10-spoke diamond-cut alloy wheels. If you pay close attention, you'll see that the face of these alloys are actually a 7. Pretty nice little design cue. Being an EV, the Hycan 007 has a braking regeneration system, which is unobtrusive and smoothly changes from the brake regeneration motor to physical braking, thanks in part to Bosch's intelligent iBooster system. Bosch's iBooster system is said to allow up to 100% energy recycling and can provide up to 20% more range.
The best compliment is that you don't notice a switch over to physical braking. The Hycan will come to a stop from 62 miles an hour in 38 meters. You do need to step on the brake to engage hard braking, but they're easy to get used to.
The burning question whenever we think about EVs, range. With strides in range and recharge times, range anxiety is slowly disappearing. Well, if you know someone else who has a Hycan 007, then fear no more, because Hycan 007s can recharge each other. That's right, if you've got a friend who's got one of these cars, they can connect their car to yours and recharge your battery from theirs. V2V is what Hycan calls it, and I hope more manufacturers make this a feature in the future.
Talking about batteries, the base model Hycan 007 has a 73 kilowatt-hour battery pack, with the top 2 trims having a 93 kilowatt-hour pack. All the battery packs for the Hycan 007 are CATL liquid-cooled lithium battery packs, which is almost a standard of Chinese EVs nowadays.
So the big one for EVs, range. Well, the Hycan has a very respectable range estimate. The base is claimed to have 325 miles, while the top 2 trims have 400 miles. Now that is on the NEDC standard, so expected to be lower on the WTLP. I reckon 250 miles and 330 miles is what you'd expect to see.
The other major point for EVs is of course their charging times, which again in recent years is becoming more of a moot point. Fast charging from 30 to 80% is around half an hour, which is becoming sort of a standard in the EV world. The base model with the smaller battery pack is done in 33 minutes, and the larger battery pack in 35. Slow charge is, well, it's slow. 6 hours and 10 minutes for the base model, and 8 hours for the other trims. Slow charging times are kind of irrelevant, as most people will charge overnight, giving them plenty of time to recharge before work in the morning.
Want to know another little trick of the Hycan 007? You can charge other things from its battery. That's right, it will put out a 220 volt AC output, so you can connect some electrical appliances. Perhaps useful if you're the adventurous type who likes to go camping with the luxury of electricity. Maybe a bit of glamping. The interior of the 007 is described by Hycan as futuristic, inspired by sci-fi spaceship design. And you can see what they mean. This single floating piece of glass housing the 3 12.3-inch screens looks like it could be the control panel for a spaceship in the next sci-fi blockbuster. Thrust to 100%. Commence launch. All 3 screens are LCD, and the 2 central ones are touchscreens. Each screen has a job to do, so to speak. Instrument panel, display screen, and system control screen. The screen behind the steering wheel is, of course, the instrument panel. It displays all the regular information and can be customized to show a whole host of car information and media.
The left-hand side of the screen is going to give you your speed, drive mode, and gear selected. In the middle, you have your self-driving information, showing when ACC or self-driving is engaged. Most of the middle of the screen is going to show you the road markings and what vehicles the car senses around it. The right-hand side shows battery level and estimated range. You can also cycle through different sub-menus to show battery information and consumption, trip information, vehicle notifications and warning, as well as the media that is playing.
Controlling the instrument panel is done by this multifunction steering wheel. The steering wheel is 4-way adjustable and wrapped in leather.
It's also used to engage ACC, self-driving modes, and the AI assistant. It handles all the usual stuff as well, like phone calls, track skipping, and volume. Although the Hycan does have a setting to allow the volume to increase as the car's speed increases to help insulate the cabin from outside noise. On the top trim, you also get a drowsiness and safety monitor. It can sense unsafe driving behaviour like using the phone, and it will remind you to pay attention to the road. If you choose to ignore it, the car will respond by emitting a loud, more discouraging alarm. The other two screens in the centre work in tandem. The top screen is the display and media center. You can use the built-in music apps like QQ Music and Himalaya, which are like Chinese Spotify services. You can also AirPlay movies and other things directly from your phone to this screen. The satellite navigation is also handled by the top screen with a built-in system, obviously all in Chinese. You can't mirror your phone in here, which is becoming more of a common thing with Chinese EVs. Personally, I think it's because manufacturers are working hard to develop their own OS systems as a differentiating experience for their brand. Rather than every phone just displaying an iPhone screen, manufacturers are creating their own ecosystems for their customers, connecting phone apps and in-car entertainment. Oh yes, and the most exciting little trick this screen does? Controls a frickin' drone. So you have a DJI drone, you can sync it to the car and use this top screen or the bottom screen as a controller for your drone. That's pretty cool. I bet your car can't do that. At the moment, only the DJI Maverick Air is compatible, but Hycan say that they're going to increase the compatibility to other DJI drones. This top screen can also be used as an interior mirror to monitor the back seats, especially useful if you have kids back there. In fact, if you happen to be an awful parent and forget your child or doggy in the car, the Hycan can detect life that has been left in the locked car. It will then notify the owner via the app. If you are still negligent and don't remove your precious child, the Hycan will turn on the AC to cool down the car and open the sky roof a little to let some air circulate until you return. Parenting can be hard, I know, but even with this feature, it's probably best not to leave them behind. The bottom screen is the system control panel, and this is where you can interact with the car's settings. Now, the AI assistant can control over 80% of the car's functions, but if you don't want to use Little Can, then this is where you go. On the first screen, down the left-hand side is the different driving modes for the Hycan 007. Sport, Normal, Eco, iPedal, which is the one-pedal driving mode, and Extreme Eco mode, which is going to limit your top speed to 55 miles an hour to save battery and help you get to a charger. Along the bottom, you have self-driving settings, 360-degree panoramic camera, boot release allowing the boot to automatically open, charge port unlocking, revealing the charge port so you can get some juice, parking sensor activation. This car actually is equipped with 6 parking sensors in the front and 4 or 6 in the rear depending on the trim, hill descent control, and ESP switch. The middle screen is your dual climate control screen where you can control all of the AC functions. You control the temperature on each side by sliding these up and down. Both seats are heated and the driver's seat is ventilated. You can click here and control the direction of the vents. You can choose from the presets down below and have different settings for left and right. You can choose from having the air blow on you or not, but my favourite presets are the ability to have the air move up and down or side to side. You can also use your finger to drag the streams of air. The Hycan's AC system has an N95 filter to clean the incoming air of PM 2.5. It also has a pollen filter, as well as the ability to monitor air quality and automatically start purifying the air if needed. The last screen handles some Hycan integrated apps and connections. There's Bluetooth connection, camera selection, weather, drone control, and phone book. Now you can press this little AirPlay button on the side and they will display on the screen above you, so you can use this screen for other things, kind of like split screen working. Up on the dashboard is where you'll find Little Can, Hycan's AI assistant. It's based heavily on the technology from NIO's own Nomi AI.
Now, as I said before, it can control up to 80% of the car's functions, and you can engage it by either pressing a button on the steering wheel or by saying its name. Hi, Hycan.
在呢。
开空调.
好的，这就打开空调。
Obviously in Chinese. Coming down the centre, you're going to find this floating island in between the front seats, and you're going to find your rotary gear selector here, and next to it the electronic parking brake, flanked by 3 buttons: the hazard lights, the auto hold, and on the top model, the auto park assist feature. Behind that, you've got your fast charging wireless pad for your mobile phone. The rest of the island is taken up by this large armrest, which when you lift it up reveals 2 storage compartments, one very large deep storage compartment and a smaller one with 3 connectors inside. There's a USB 3.0 and a USB-C for charging. There's also a slot here for an SD card, and that's for the built-in Dashcam. Now, SD card is not included. Underneath this island, there is some space to store something larger, like a handbag or any other kind of items that you want, and there is a rubberized floor here to stop things slipping about.
All models of the Hycan 007 do come with a Wi-Fi hotspot, which is always convenient for passengers. The sound system is an 8-speaker setup with a subwoofer in the boot on the top model, an optional extra on the lower models.
No fancy audio partner tie-in, but the system performs well enough. Although, if you're an audiophile, it probably won't be up to your standard. One touch up and down windows all the way around, a huge sky roof that can open and has an electronic shade. The front windscreen and front windows are laminated acoustic glass, while the rear windscreen and rear windows are laminated privacy glass.
Adding to the sci-fi feel is what Hycan calls Star Rail interior lighting, which has 32 colour options, giving a nice ambient glow at night.
Now look at the funky design of these front seats. All the seats on all the trims are full leather.
Both these front seats are perforated and just look fantastic with these nice thigh, waist and shoulder bolsters. The headrest is a real piece of design. It can be adjusted up and down while still looking partially integrated, partially floating.
A nice bit of metal look trim here as well. Now, both front seats are electronically adjustable 6 ways, and the driver's seat has memory function and lumbar support on all models. Now, before I show you the rear, let me first show you the boot. Now, from a car this size, you may have been expecting the boot to be a little bit larger than it is, but there's a good reason for that.
There is an electronic tailgate and the boot is reasonable, but it's not ginormous. But there is a reason for that.
And it's clear when you're sat in the back of here. It's a little bit like the Weasley's Ford Angular. No, it doesn't fly, but there is way more room inside here than looks on the outside. And that makes sense because Chinese buyers do love rear legroom. I mean, look at it. There's a lot of knee room. You can get your feet under the seats quite nicely. And if you're sat in the middle, it's not too bad because the floor is flat. No need to straddle a transmission tunnel. The other thing is that these seats recline, and they recline quite far. And that's another reason. All of this space inside here, comfortable and relaxing, comes at the expense of boot space.
Now, the rear bench has an armrest with USB charging sockets integrated on each side. There's also an AC vent where you'd expect to find it. And the rear does have a flat floor, which is always good news for the middle seat passenger. The rear seats are even a design feature of this interior, with the outside seats being sculpted for a more hugging fit. Now, even with the reclining function, these seats do fold down to give you more loading room if you need it. One thing that is missing from the rear are cup holders.
There's no denying it, it's a right funky thing. The Hycan 007 is going to be the more expensive offering from the Hycan brand, positioning itself just below the likes of the NIO ES6.
How big is the Hycan 007? Let's compare it to another similarly sized SUV, the VW Touareg. Now, the Hycan is 37 millimeters lower and narrower than the VW Touareg, which is no surprise, seeing the Touareg is quite a boxy SUV. But this is where it gets interesting. The Hycan is 1 millimeter longer than the Touareg, but a huge 25 millimeters longer in its wheelbase, meaning more room inside.
This is the advantage of the package of EVs, not needing a big old engine up front, with relatively short overhangs. At the heaviest end of the comparison, the Touareg is only 12 kilos lighter than the feature-packed self-driving Hycan.
Look at these lights, they make a huge statement. This daylight running light juts all the way down. Kind of reminds me of Cadillac. That's a brand that's gone through rejuvenation from old man car to more young hip buyers. Now, the daylight running lights and the headlights are all LEDs. There's also automatic lights and adaptive high beam assist on all models.
Add a splash of chrome here in the headlight cluster for good measure, and whether you like them or not, you can't deny they make a bold statement.
If you don't think that Hycan's lights are on point, just take a look at these conceptish rear light clusters. It's like Hycan went for the boldest examples of lights when they designed this car.
These rear lights wrap around the rear of the car. I can't help but be reminded of the rear lights from the Lexus LC500, a truly sexy car in every aspect.
Being EV means you've got to have pop-out handles, and the Hycan doesn't disappoint. They pop out, they pop in. Job done, 101 of EV design.
Chrome? Of course chrome. There's a chrome framing running over the windows and other small chrome bits, as well as chrome wrapping around the whole bottom of the car. The side of the car looks pinched in, giving this illusion of an hourglass shape. Dark black roof and pillars to give a sense of a lower, sleeker SUV. The roof rake isn't that aggressive, but the black upper trim helps to give it a suggestion of a lower roofline.
Now, the Hycan 007 is what's called a smart EV, meaning it's not just powered by electric motors and batteries, but it actually has some smart tech and driving tech on board. The top trim has automatic parking, as well as a drowsiness and safety monitoring, and SDIS, or narrow road assistance, which is going to turn on the 360-degree panoramic camera when it senses the road or situation narrows to help you better navigate through it.
The rest of the self-driving features are on all the trim levels, which is a massive bonus for Hycan. Even if you buy the lowest, cheapest model, you're getting access to nearly all of the self-driving tech Hycan has to offer.
I mentioned that the Hycan 007 has a 360-degree panoramic camera view that offers multiple views around the car, and they can be individually selected in the infotainment system. It also has a built-in Dashcam, which is a necessity on Chinese urban roads with the amount of lane jumping and fender benders that occur routinely. The Hycan 007 is currently classed as having level 2+ autonomous driving.
It means its self-driving tech can steer, brake and accelerate by itself, avoiding obstacles it senses on the road. Of course, under the watchful eye of the driver. It is still very much an advanced driving assist feature rather than a full self-driving function, and requires constant supervision.
The Hycan has a good selection of self-driving features and tech. There's cruise control, adaptive cruise control, and integrated cruise assist. We all know what cruise control is, and adaptive cruise control just means that it can maintain distance with the car in front, coming to a complete stop if necessary. Integrated cruise assist is the main one. That's the feature that allows Hycan to self-drive on motorways, as long as you keep your hand on the steering wheel. We haven't quite got to a point where you can take a nap while commuting to work. However, Hycan reckons that they'll be producing level 3 or level 4 autonomous vehicles within the next 2 years. There are some active and passive safety features that work in conjunction with a self-driving system, such as forward collision warning, auto emergency braking, and lane centering assist, which is going to help you stay nicely between the lines.
So the Hycan 007, what's it like to drive? Comfortable and reasonable, really. You can tell there's no adaptive suspension, you can tell there's no air suspension, it's just struts and springs, but the dampening and the ride is actually pretty good. Hycan obviously have put some effort into making sure it rides nicely, you know, for Chinese customers. ride comfort is a big priority when they're driving and buying a new car. It's not the fastest car out there. It's not that slow though, especially off the Mark to about 30 miles an hour. That takes 3.2, 3.3 seconds. I mean, it's got 205 horsepower and 350 newton meters of torque, so it's fairly peppy. But compared to things like Teslas and maybe the P7, it's not going to compete with cars like that in outright acceleration. But it's not trying to. This is priced below those cars, and it offers something different. This has got tons of space in it, behaves very nicely on the road, and for the price, you know, it's a good value proposition. Steering is, you know, it's on the light side, but it's still kind of direct. The brakes are good, feel progressive. The brake regeneration isn't intrusive, you know, and these are all good things that we're seeing now across a lot of EVs. Gone are the days of, you know, horrible brakes because of that brake regeneration and physical braking switchover.
In normal driving situations where the driver is in control, there's a number of assisting features to help out. Lane departure warning, lane keep assist, blind spot detection, and rear cross traffic alert for when you're reversing out of those spots where you just can't quite see what's coming. That will literally save your behind. There's also traffic sign recognition, which is going to alert the posted speed limit for a given stretch of road.
The EV market in China is currently highly competitive, with more and more new brands and models being released. Hycan, like all new EV brands in China, is going to have its work cut out to carve a small piece of the market. Having raised more capital, the Hycan brand are scaling their pop-up store footprints in major Chinese cities' shopping malls. Backed by a large domestic manufacturer, Hycan has a very good chance to become a larger EV brand, but time will tell.
So what about the 007? Well, it's aimed at customers with families who are looking for their first EV. It's a premium offering and has been designed with Chinese customers in mind, from its large rear space to the way it rides on the road. It's connected and has all the tech. The fact that nearly all of the autonomous driving assist features are available on even the cheapest model is definitely a strong point for Hycan. Along with its in-car life detection function, AI voice-controlled assistant and drone flying capabilities, the Hycan definitely has some neat tricks. It's a solid first car from a new brand, but is it enough to go up against the other EV players in the Chinese domestic market? What do you think?